Hey everyone, this is Mike and today we are talking about Scholar. I already mentioned it in yesterday's video, but Scholar is currently and has been since the start of my Final Fantasy journey my favorite healer. So today I'm going to talk about why that is and why it makes me quite excited for Sage, seeing how that is going to be our next barrier healer. Now, I do know that Astrologian technically can serve as a barrier healer as well with their Nocturnal Sect, but there are still a few key differences between a Nocturnal Ast and a Scholar. Biggest difference is that Scholar doesn't really have any good spammable heals. Both Astrologian and White Mage have stronger versions of both single target and AoE heals, whereas Scholar is kinda stuck with the one. We have Physic, but that's really worthless. And then we have Succor and Adloquium. You can use emergency tactics to make your Succor and your Adlo into a stronger heal so that it is comparable to those of Astro and White Mage, but emergency tactics is again on a cooldown and thus you can't spam it. Of course, the times where you actually need to spam emergency tactics are almost non-existent, but you get the point. Scholar relies much more on their cooldown management than the other two healers. If you want to play Astro and White Mage optimally, then you will of course also be relying heavily on cooldown management, but as a newer healer player, it is much more forgiving for not knowing your full toolkit, because you have these stronger spammable skills to fall back on, whereas Scholar doesn't really have that. But this was one of the things that attracted me to playing Scholar in the first place. I haven't really been using Scholar much in terms of dungeons lately, because White Mage is just way too strong for that, but back in Heavensward, when I was getting into healing, it always felt incredible if I could heal a full dungeon run purely relying on my Fairy and my Aetherflow skills. It's also this cooldown management that really taught me how to become better as a healer, because it teaches you how to make better use of all of the tools that are available to you, because you kind of have to some extent at least. It's this that makes me really excited for Sage, because I would totally expect it to be fairly similar in that regard. Weaker spammable skills and maybe a few extra resource bound skills that you will have to manage to get through a fight. Now, if you're a newer player looking to get into healing, then don't let what I'm saying here deter you from trying Scholar, because these weaker heals won't really affect you at all until you get much later into the end game, and once you're there you will also have a co-healer to help you out when you run out of resources, and you will also have gained a lot of experience on healing getting up to that point as well. But getting familiar with your whole healing kit is something that will make a big difference in your performance as a healer, and that doesn't only go for Scholar, that goes for the other two as well. Not just in how well you can handle certain healing scenarios, but also how much damage you are able to contribute towards the raid party, because yes, a healer should try to DPS as much as they can, especially when you're looking at endgame raids, because that is where DPSing as a healer is pretty much mandatory if you want to make it through a fight. But I'm kind of drifting off track here, back to Scholar. I think the first time where I really felt like the barrier healer playstyle was the one for me was when I first healed E4 Savage, Titan. I ended up getting my first healing experience in that fight on White Mage, and unfortunately enough I was playing with a party that wasn't too keen on using their mitigation, Reprisal, Shake It Off, Heart of Light, Troubadour, Adel, etc, whatever you might have. You know what I'm talking about. And the Scholar that I was playing alongside with also didn't really have much in terms of mitigation plans, so since White Mage doesn't really offer much in terms of preventive healing, I just found myself spamming heals almost constantly, because the party would just keep dropping really low, not only from the constant AoE damage, but also from the damage over time that one of Titan's skills would put on the players. Because for those that don't know, the severity of the damage over time that comes from an attack like that can also be mitigated by using normal mitigation. It doesn't only affect the initial damage of the hit, it also affects the bleed that comes after. So even though we eventually managed to clear the fight, it was a very stressful experience, because I just felt like there wasn't really anything that I could do outside of just spam heal all the time. So the second time that I ventured into E4 Savage, I went on Scholar instead, and I tried to stagger my mitigation so that I would have just about something for each of the hard hitting attacks, and it was a world of difference. The AoEs didn't hit that hard, the bleed barely tickled, so it meant that both me and my co-healer were fine to do more damage, and then just let the regen keep our party healthy instead of having to spam heals constantly just to keep people alive. So it felt really good that despite running with a party that might not be using their mitigation all that well, that I can still carry that part of the fight to some extent, because what Scholar might be lacking in spammable healing output, it more than makes up for in the fact that they have all these different sources of mitigation that they can pull from, be it either to use a lot of them together to barely take damage from one strong hit, or be it to spread them out over a longer period of time to mitigate a constant stream of outgoing damage, kinda like what we have right now at the end of E12 Savage, the Oracle of Darknesses, Soft and Rage. One thing I do really need to get more used to is playing alongside a co-healer. Up to this point I've mostly played healer in a solo environment, dungeons, or the occasional solo heal extreme trial, but I've never really done much savage healing where I'm supposed to be working together with my party. So that is something that I'm currently working on now that I have the opportunity to play healer in a static, in a savage environment. Finding the balance of how much I should be doing or how much I should let my co-healer heal is still a bit hard for me to find at times, but I do feel like I'm getting a lot better at it. And being able to communicate things with him as well is also a really big help that I would not have if I were to be playing in a party finder group instead. So overall, I'm really enjoying my time on Scholar at the moment. I'm definitely not at the point where I would feel confident going into week 1 Savage proc on a healer, but if one of our healers in my static would want to switch roles somewhere down the line during farm to make things interesting again, then I would 100% be up for that. For now, I think we still have a few more weeks of Savage farming to go before we take a break again to wait for the tiers to be unlocked, so during that time I'm going to try to be more comfortable than I already am at this point, because while I might feel a bit uncomfortable going into a new fight on healer for the first time, after I've spent a little bit of time in there, things tend to get quite comfy pretty fast, and it feels really good to build confidence on a new role like that as well. But that's about all I really had to say for today. Been having a lot of fun on Scholar and hoping that Sage will be right up my alley as well once that one does make its way into the game. Let me know which of the 3 healers is your favorite and why that is the case. Is it from a gameplay perspective or do you like it from a thematical perspective? Let me know down below. And with that, I want to thank you for watching. I want to thank my Patreons for their support, and I'll see you in the next one.